Just recently, Russia announced that it's going to pull out of the START treaty, right?
What is the START treaty?
The START treaty was a treaty that was put in place during the Obama years to basically limit and downsize the total number of nuclear weapons that existed between the United States and the Russian arsenals. So a downsizing and modernization and safety like protocols, right, for our two different nuclear weapon arsenals. I mean, it was set to expire in 2025. Most people thought it was going to renew, but now Putin just announced he's not going to renew it, right? That came on the heels of Biden showing up in Kiev on President's Day, which in and of itself is kind of ridiculous. I don't know why the U.S. president would spend American President's Day in Kiev. It doesn't honor our history of presidents.
Well, some people claim he's not all there.
But either way, so to counter that kind of snub in the face of Russia, Putin announced he's going to pull out of the START treaty. Now, nuclear weapons, there's a treaty in place. The non-weaponization of space is a treaty that's existed since the 70s. Nuclear weapons actually work the way they work specifically because they're supposed to fit within the guidelines of a treaty. So the treaty basically says you cannot put a weapon into orbit around Earth. Nuclear weapons follow that rule because they actually launch in a elliptical pattern to re-engage or re-enter Earth's atmosphere. So they leave from one part of Earth and they enter another part of Earth. They do not make a full rotation around the Earth, so they do not make an orbit. With the idea of weaponizing space, it becomes scary because now there are so many more people involved that were never part of that treaty. China's putting things in space. They were never part of the original treaty. We've got commercial entities putting things in space, right? You've got friggin' Elon Musk is launching Teslas into orbit. So there's all this stuff now going into space that was never part of the original treaty not to weaponize space. And all you would basically have to do is essentially put something into space that's carrying a laser, carrying even a dumb bomb, a dumb explosive, right? All you need is gravity. You can just drop something out of a vehicle in space, and as long as it can withstand re-entry into the atmosphere, essentially you have a space-based weapons platform. So it is scary to think about the future. Modern-day weapons, smart weapons, energy-directed weapons, or directed energy weapons, laser weapons, being based in orbit around the Earth.
How many countries do you know of that are putting weapons into space?
I don't know of anyone currently putting weapons into space, but the countries that we know have the infrastructure to put satellites and to put large vehicles into space, I mean, that's got to be pushing up towards 25 or 30 countries. I mean, just some of the ones that jump to mind that I'm not comfortable with putting items into space. Pakistan can launch into space. India can launch into space. Turkey can launch into space.
Iran
can probably launch into space. I mean, if they can't do it themselves, they'd be able to get the know-how from the Russians or the Chinese to be able to do it, right? North Korea might be able to launch into space. They have missile platforms that carry nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of very intense applied mathematics that goes into getting something into orbit and making it stay there. But I mean, these are all countries that have a grudge with someone else that they might consider putting a weapon into space. At least the United States and like Russia, for example, like we have this contentious relationship. Remember, in World War II, we were allies, and then there was the Cold War, and then coming out of the Cold War and in the early 90s, we kind of became friendly again, and then that has slowly kind of dissolved into what it is now. Obviously, exacerbated significantly in the last year. But there's a weird relationship where both of us are really fairly responsible nuclear partners, at least until we see otherwise.